Okay, I've cut this hole as large as I dare because I'm getting dangerously close to even an uncut or untapered peg being too small. So what I'm doing is actually reversing the reaming backwards. So I'm not really cutting wood, I'm kind of burnishing it, trying to get the shape perfectly round. Okay, we may have some problems with this G-string peg, but let's keep our fingers crossed on whether we get any. Now I've got my peg holes as round as they're going to get, which is pretty round. And I'm going to do a final just cleanup, just very lightly turning the reamer in the hole, and then burnishing it by reversing the reamer. This might be a good time to point out, probably earlier would have been a good time. Make sure you get your peg staggering right. The pegs on the right side of the fiddle, the treble side, the first peg goes in the second hole, next peg goes in the last hole. Then on the bass side of the fiddle, your G-string peg goes in the hole closest to the fingerboard, and then your D-string hole goes there. So now I'm finishing up burnishing the last peg hole, the D-string hole. Oh, there's nothing magical about the D-string hole being the last one. It just happened to be the last one I'm doing. Remember, when burnishing, you're turning the reamer backwards, so you're not really cutting wood, you're just kind of smoothing it. Now we have a lot of peg shavings and even sawdust in the peg box, so get rid of that. Using the high-tech way. One could also use an air can. Now in cases where we've had to ream the holes rather large, it's good to know you want to use the fatter pegs in the larger holes. So it's just, we're going to pick out a peg for each string, so that one we have lots of diameter to taper down. So that'll be the G-string peg. Now, the skinniest peg, I know the D string I had to ream the least, so that'll go there. There, I think. Okay.
Be careful.
So we have now what looks like a really funny looking peg box. We have pegs that have not been tapered yet in the peg holes. So now comes the fun part, the tapering. Okay, when tapering pegs for the first time, I would advise getting twice as many pegs as you need, because there is an art that can only be learned by experience of messing up pegs, of how to taper a peg. Now this particular machine is called a Juzek tapering machine, and we place the peg in like so, and we loosen this knob, press the peg in until the smaller of the two rings lines up perfectly with the blade, with the cutting blade. Okay, so what you do is you start turning the peg, and at the same time, as you're turning the peg, tighten down on the machine and start shaving the peg. Being very careful not to shave off the ring on the peg. Incidentally, the way you can tell whether a violin has been nicely set up, this is especially true with ebony pegs. When you get the pegs, they're nice and shiny black because they've been dyed and polished. Well, the shaft of the peg should not, if it's not shiny and polished, it's a pretty good indication that a luthier has actually gone to the trouble to fit the peg perfectly to the violin. So I have about an hour's work of carefully turning the peg and tightening this top screw as I'm turning it. I know it's not really easy to see. Okay, this will be our first test fitting of the G-string peg, and not quite enough, so we're gonna okay, this is the second fitting. I think we have that nailed, and there's very little friction noise. Turns very smoothly. You may never have seen a peg turn that smoothly before. What I'm checking for is to see if there are any skips. Because if it skips, you're not going to be able to tune your fiddle without fine tuners. And remember, you are not going to have fine tuners. Okay, first peg done, 3 more to go. I will rejoin you after I've done the next 3. Well, the first peg's not actually done. We have to cut off the end of the peg and do some cosmetic work, which is called doming the peg. And we have to drill a hole in the peg for the string to go.